Risky business, talking about orthodontics. Actually, when it comes to the risks associated with getting braces or Invisalign, moving teeth, it's generally safe. It is generally a safe deal. So don't freak out. Don't worry. There are some things that you can do to help reduce your risks. We're going to talk about that. But before we get there, I want to talk to you about a few of the risks you might encounter when you're trying to move your teeth. So one of the most common risks that you will likely will encounter, is tooth soreness and mobility. All right, when you're moving teeth, you have to put force on the tooth, and that force has to be maintained over a certain amount of time. Usually it's at least 4 to 6 hours before you actually see some sort of tooth movement. When you put pressure on a tooth, the body sends cells, just call them cells, to help in the process of moving the tooth. Well, the tooth is in the bone, there's gums around it, and so the body has to change the bone and the gum tissue, all those things that are surrounding the tooth in order to allow the tooth to move. And as part of that process, things get a little tender. Some inflammation, pain, soreness, and that usually lasts for a couple days. Now, does it last the entirety of treatment? No, usually it peaks, especially at the very beginning when you first get it, and then it usually goes away every time you get it adjusted or tightened, or every time you apply new pressure. Sometimes you can feel a little bit of soreness, but perhaps it's not as bad as the first time. So that is a common risk that you should prepare yourself. Tooth soreness. How do you manage that? Well, you can, with permission from your parents, advice from your parents and or provider, Tylenol and ibuprofen, and that can help you manage the pain, whatever you would take for a headache. Some have recommended that you can chew on things that can help release the pressure, but we're not gonna get too much into that. So, tooth soreness, mobility. Well, whenever you move the teeth, your tooth can get a little bit loose, but don't worry, there is a reasonable amount of looseness that happens when you move the teeth because the bone which supports the tooth has to change. So anyways, stick close to your provider. A little bit of mobility in your teeth, not the end of the world. You can get better as you get through the process. So tooth mobility, tooth soreness. Another common risk that you may encounter as you go through treatment, whether with braces or Invisalign, is the white spots. Yes, I'm talking about demineralization. Tooth is made up of a bunch of minerals, all right? And when you leave food on your teeth, have a lot of acidic drinks, right? It facilitates the breakdown of your tooth, basically leading to decay, right? Cavities. But instead of getting really big cavities, it's like the beginning of a cavity. So it doesn't actually form a hole. Sometimes it can. Most of the time, it just demineralizes the tooth, leaves a wider spot on the tooth. It doesn't look too good. It's hard to remineralize and make it go back. People use fluoride. There's other products out there, compounds that people are trying to use to deal with white spots, but you may be out of luck. So avoid it in the first place by just keeping your teeth really clean so that you can get straight teeth, a beautiful bite, and healthy looking teeth with no white spots. So watch out for that risk. There's two more risks. First one we're going to talk about is called root resorption. All right, we already talked about how when your teeth are moving, the bone has to change. Well, during that process, the tooth is moving through the bone. And if the bone or if the tooth is moved too fast, or maybe it's got to travel through a lot of bone, that can put a lot of pressure on the tooth. And the tooth has cells that try to maintain the integrity of the tooth, right? The health, the length of the tooth. Sometimes when you go through that process, and even sometimes without moving your teeth, that's just a point, an important point. This can happen even without moving teeth, but it has been associated with tooth movement. Heavy forces that the tooth root can get smaller, right? The longer the root, the more stable the tooth stays in the bone. But if the tooth gets smaller, right, or the root gets smaller, that means there's less of the tooth that's in the bone, and so the tooth can get more loose over time. Just because you have a short root doesn't mean that the tooth is a goner, but we try to avoid shortening of the roots. And so we watch that as we go through treatment. It is a risk and hard to avoid sometimes when you're trying to move the teeth. Light, continuous forces. Try to make the treatment as fast, as quick as possible to reduce this risk. Okay, and the way that you can help things go fast is by wearing your bands, keeping your teeth clean, not breaking things, keeping your appointments, do your best. And the last thing I want to talk about is when you put pressure on the teeth can become sensitive. Each of our teeth have nerves, and that's what, when we say sensitive, the nerve is responding to the force and the pressure. And usually that sensitivity, if it does increase initially, tends to go away over time. It doesn't have any long-lasting effects. Otherwise, orthodontists would definitely be out of business because you can't have all the teeth just getting sensitive all the time whenever you move them. And finally, on occasion, it has been reported that either a tooth that previously was, hit or banged, so trauma, that type of tooth eventually dies. Sometimes the tooth movement can stimulate that death. It's not that the tooth movement caused it or was anything abnormal. It just can be associated. Whenever you move teeth, the nerve, all those things around the tooth, the bone, the gums, everything has to adapt, and your teeth may adapt poorly. Again, assuming that you don't apply just incredibly great forces, which most orthodontists practice light continuous forces, then your risk for tooth death, right, or nerve damage when the tooth goes black is relatively low. And the benefits of straightening your teeth and beautifying your bite outweigh the risk of that actually happening. But it still could. You need to be aware. So those are some risks of orthodontic treatment. Does everybody encounter them? Well, some of the more common ones like soreness, tooth soreness, or white spots on your teeth if you're not good at taking care of your teeth, root resorption, and much less frequently when you actually have not just sensitivity of the teeth, but like when your tooth dies. So don't freak out. Do your best. Like I said, keep your teeth clean, keep your appointments, do what you're asked to do. Make the entire treatment as fast as possible by doing your part. By doing that, you can reduce your risk of those things significantly and end up with straight teeth and a beautiful bite. I hope you're not freaked out, you're not scared about the risks of orthodontic treatment, but they are there. There are so many risks in lots of different things, and I have just explained how you can reduce your risk and hopefully have a really good experience straightening your teeth. Hey, if you're in the McKinney or Anna, Texas area, or even a little bit further out, come find us. We can talk about what the benefits of orthodontic treatment are for you, the associated risks, and if you decide that you want to take this journey, I would love to help you. And if you can't find a way down here or over here to us, share this with a friend. Otherwise, like the video, continue to watch the channel so that I can open your eyes to the wonderful world of straight teeth and beautiful bites. That's all I've got, just a little PFOing so you know where you're going. Packard out.